3, 2, 1.
What is going on, Southwest ISD? What is going on? Welcome back to the best podcast and your number one podcast for all things Southwest ISD athletics. This is the Scoreboard podcast. My name is Brandon Medina, and I'm joined, as always, by your athletic director, Mr. Peter Wagner. We will be your hosts for today's journey into Southwest ISD athletics, and it's going to be a fun one, man. It's going to be packed up with basketball, soccer. We have a signing day today, and more than ever, it is cold outside, but we are keeping it up with the hot takes, keeping it warm here inside.
Wow.
You like that?
That's almost professional right there.
Almost. We're right there. We're right there.
It would be like the Vikings being a professional football team.
Thank you for joining.
Did you hear the crickets that just happened right there? But it's kind of like the Cowboy fans.
There's a lot of hate in this room. But with that, let's talk a little bit about, before we get into the basketball and soccer kind of things, talk to us a little bit about the state of just Southwest ISD athletics. What are you excited about? What's going on right now?
We're getting ready for track season. Track season's getting started. The first track meet is the Joe Marsh Dragon Relays on January the 31st.
Nice.
They had to move the UIL and testing and things like that has really moved our track calendar way up, which is not very exciting because you're running literally in the middle of winter around here. And then our tennis schedule is like 8 months long, it feels like, because of that. And so excited about track, excited about tennis starting this spring. We got baseball starts. We started softball last week, and this Friday baseball starts. So this is that time of year from mid-January until about mid to late February, depending on the playoffs, about 4 or 5 week stretch where everything that could be happening is happening other than the fall sports. You got all of your winter sports are going on and all of your spring sports are going on. And so very busy time, easy time to, if you want to see something, there's something going on. And so excited about those things. And then, still we got realignment coming up on February 1st in a couple of weeks. We're looking forward to that, what that looks like. Just a lot of stuff getting ready kind of. This is that time in administration where you start to look for the next year, that 24-25 year, start planning and doing those types of things. So we're doing a lot of those things as well. Talk
to me a little bit about, for those who maybe heard that right now and weren't super keen on it or understand it. Talk to me about the importance of realignment. What is that for the people listening?
So realignment, every 2 years, the UIL will take our school enrollments. And so this year in October, we had to turn in our numbers. And so I think Southwest High School was about 2,184 or something like that, and Legacy was 2,170 something. And so kudos to our administration because we have two schools that are almost exactly the same size. So they take those numbers, and the top 245 largest schools in Texas go into the 6A division. And then the next, however many they want, 5A. Become 5A and everything. And so that number, they already put those numbers out. So Southwest and Legacy will both be 5A again for another 2 years, regardless of how much we grow or whatever. And so they put you in a district for everything but football and swimming pretty much. And then powerlifting isn't a UIL sport, so that's not part of it. But everything else goes into like your volleyball, your basketball, your tennis, soccer, baseball, softball, track. Those things, they all go into one set of 5A numbers. And so like for right now, that district is what we're talking about today. Is Medina Valley and those guys. Now we know Medina Valley is going 6A. We also know Jay is probably going to be in with us at some point in time. We're kind of trading them. But you never know how that's going to go with we're kind of in that no man's land of we can go to Laredo, we can go to different places, or we can go north. And so that's the nervous part of where do we go? How is that going to work and things like that. I think we're pretty much going to stay where we've been because it's just so simple. And then in football, we'll probably stay something along the same lines. In football, what they do is they take your 5A school and then they take the next 125 or so, 130, and they become Division 1, and then the other group becomes Division 2, and they do that at the beginning, and then we go.
So, and I don't want to focus on it too much, but I just wanted to ask the question for my own sake, to you. You know, back when we first met, right, when I was playing and we were all here in the 2010s to like 2015, 2016, you know, you had the Steels, you had the East Centrals, you had different teams that were not playing now, right, because we were 6A then, all one school. How does that affect kind of rivalries? How does that affect when you go through this kind of stuff? Obviously, Medina Valley's always been there, all that stuff, but looking at the rivalries to keep kind of that fun competition going year after year after year, how does this kind of affect that? Or do you all talk about that at all when it comes to like athletic directors?
Well, I mean, it doesn't really. We don't have any control over it,
right?
And so, like, if you look at when in the 2010s, the 2016s, Medina Valley was 13, 14, 1,500.
Yeah.
You know, we were 3,500 to 4,000. We were huge. And so we never really played them.
Medina,
so that rivalry that everybody talked about from the 80s to the mid 90s and things like that, because when we split, that revitalized that. But what did we lose? Well, we didn't play J anymore. We weren't playing, you know, some of those. But really, when we went 6A, we're really the only 6A group, and we really didn't play the rivals that, like, the things that everybody talked about from the past. The 1998 or whatever it was South Sand game when they were both undefeated, and there's like 20,000 people down in Dragon Stadium and stuff like that. Medina Valley, you know, we would play Harlandale every year, but that was like hey, we're going to play Harlandale. And then when we went undefeated a few years and got really good, Harlandale wasn't interested in playing us anymore. Yeah. And so a lot of that was built on some of the success that we brought in, and then so you lose some of those rivalries because they were already 5A. Well, we dropped 5A. We're back to playing the Harlandales, the McCullums, the you know, Medina Valleys, all of those guys.
Those classic
and
matchups.
And it's back to classic matchups like it was back in the, you know, mid 90s, things like that. And so now we're starting to see that we're growing again, and to see where that goes, and stuff.
And through all these changes, one thing that is consistent is Southwest ISD produces not just great athletes, but we produce great students first and foremost. And we're excited. I know today we have a student being recognized. Talk to us a little bit about this recognition.
So we're really excited that we have our first. We have some kids who are committed. They just haven't. We haven't figured out the right time that works with their families and everything else like that. But today's our first signing. Starlet Oyella is signing with the College of the Southwest in Hobbs, New Mexico, to play volleyball.
Nice.
And so we're excited about that. We're doing that here in about 30 minutes, and really excited about those things. And, you know, that's probably one of more than a few that we'll have from a pretty phenomenal historic volleyball team.
Absolutely. Yeah, this volleyball team's been incredible. Of course, you have, I'm sure we'll hear a lot later on in the year about some soccer signings, hopefully. And then, of course, you have next year, I'm sure already that our boy Voss will be signing somewhere pretty big once we get to there. So there's so many student athletes. Obviously, you have we recognized our boy from cross country, Anthony Zapata
last night at the board meeting.
So he's going to is it UIW?
Yep, he's pretty, because of his grades. He's got almost a full ride to go to UIW to go run track and
well deserved
and run cross country.
Well deserved.
Absolutely.
So a lot of great things are happening for student athletes here at Southwest ISD. When you get to sit back and kind of look at all that happening in a different role, right? You were the coach, and you know, I remember. Funny story. I remember when we were talking, and we always talk about it on the podcast. If you've been listening, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, whatever the case. First off, we thank you for listening. But every time we talk, we give each other little jabs here and there, just messing with each other. I was never. It's no secret. I was never a great player at all. But I was always putting in the work to figure it out with Wagner. And I remember you sitting me and my mom down before when I was going to look at colleges, and you were like, "Listen, Brandon, if you want to play football, like." We can find somewhere. Just be ready to go to like North Dakota or something like something like way
We're like,
deep.
we'll find everybody a place to play.
We'll find something.
I don't know. You might have to pay, and
he's
it
like,
may
but-
be in Alaska,
Yeah,
but
he's like,
you never know.
If you really want to play, and I was like, I'm good, coach. But
Mhm.
in this different role, being athletic director, how is it to kind of see more of a top view, a bird's eye view of all of these great programs, being able to send kids to school, being able to get them an opportunity to play at the next level?
Well, I think that's more a matter of, from my role, is trying to be the best clearer of obstacles for coaches to be able to do what they do, and then to create systems that are able to really help our kids find those avenues that they want. You know, playing college sports is tough, and it's even tougher now with the transfer portal and everything else like
That's
that.
true.
And sometimes, you know, you get kids that you think that holy moly, they just want the picture of the signing,
Right.
you know. But there's a lot that goes into being successful at the college level. Lots of work after you get there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were talking about Anthony Zapata, and you know, what people don't see is the work behind the scenes. It's like that iceberg effect, right? You only see the tip of the iceberg. You see them winning and things like that. But what you didn't see is Anthony working out with his teammates and then talking to his coach and saying, okay, everybody's gone, coach. I'm going to run 10. I'm going to go over here and run 10 200-meter sprints. And so he's running 200s, and he runs 5, and he's going to get a drink. Why? He's like, oh, you done already? He's like, no, I'm just getting a drink. I got to go do 5 more. He's doing that on his own.
Yeah.
You know, that's the same thing as the basketball player that's putting up extra shots, or the soccer player who's getting more touches and things like that. And that's what our young kids need to know, and what we need to continue to build in our program. But trying to clear that way to make that happen. And I mean, if you look at it, you know, we have 4 teams really in their season right now, and the 4 soccer teams, we would expect that they're going to be in the hunt for being in the playoffs and stuff, competing for championships. But this year, unlike last year, all 4 of our basketball teams are in the hunt.
Right.
You know, our girls' basketball teams are both tied for 4th right now, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then, and our boys' basketball teams right now they're the 2 huge games.
Yep,
coming up this week. So, probably a pretty good segue to move on into that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're a pro. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Can
man.
I write that down?
Yeah, please do. Please do. We have the Fire and Armor basketball game coming up for boys and girls on Friday the 19th. It is payday, Southwest, so you better be out there. You better go out there and support some student athletes. But looking at it, what are you expecting? We'll start on the girls' side first, because I feel like that's the real competitive one to look at. And then you can look at the boys. It's going to be a tight matchup. But obviously, we talked about it last week. Southwest High School is on their own run. Legacy is, when we were talking about basketball last year, it seemed like with boys basketball specifically at Legacy, we were like, there's potential there. What can it grow into? And we're finally starting to see the fruits of that labor kind of be grown into. So let's talk about the girls first, though. What are you expecting in this matchup?
Huge game tonight at Legacy High School for the girls. You know, there's a 3-way tie for 4th, and so if you look at the Titans, this week is probably the biggest week of their season now, given everything that's going on. And so you got the Titans playing Eagle Pass Win today, who they're tied with,
Right.
and then they come into the Fire and Armor matchup on Friday with the Dragons, who they're also tied with. And so what needs to happen for them to really take ownership of that 4th spot is they need to beat Win tonight, which I think they can, and then they got to sweep the Dragons at Southwest High School. If they do that, then they take ownership.
Right.
On the flip side of that, the Dragons get a shot at a team that the district leader right now, Harlandale, who they only lost to by 3.
7-0 in district.
7-0 in district, and I think they have the closest game almost for Harlandale. And so they're going to have to go into a tough place to play at Harlandale and try to pull that one out. However, if they don't, then they end up with that 2-game stretch of Friday night against Legacy.
Yep.
They got to win that one to get the split, and then they get the home game against Win a couple games later, if not immediately after. And so those are the that stretch right there, and then still beating the teams you're supposed to beat. Medina Valley, who's getting a lot better. South San, who's I don't know if they're getting a lot better, but they're always a tough matchup. And so you got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat, and then beat those other two. And so it's nice to be talking about it though, right? Last year was like, well, they're fighting, they're trying to get better, they're doing what they can, and now they're in it, you know. So the growth there for our coaches is there, and that's pretty neat. And then we move forward from there.
Yeah, and you look at the Southwest Dragons and the Legacy Titans boys basketball game. Starting at Southwest, they're running the gauntlet, man. They're leading this pack right now for the playoffs in the district, and then you have number 2 and number 3 Harlandale and Legacy back to back. You know, what does this say about a team when you see this in the schedule? What's kind of your message as a coach to the players of like? Well,
I think we start with Legacy because they had a huge win against Harlandale the other night, and so that was what put this whole thing.
I think that was Harlandale's first loss.
That was Harlandale's first loss. So now you have McCollum at 3-2. You got South San at 3-2. Then you got Harlandale and Legacy at 4-1,
yep.
And then the Dragons at 5-0. So this is a huge two game stretch for the Dragons tonight against Harlandale, and the Dragons are. The hardest part that they struggle with is that they got a big old target on their back.
Yeah.
Whereas Legacy's kind of like, you know, they're doing great, but they're kind of overachieving for expectations. They're a younger team.
Yeah.
And you know, you look at Giovanni Aranda, who got a game ball from the Express News last week.
Yep.
Things like that, and they just play hard, and they make the right play most of the time, and that's a big deal. And so. Excited for them. They got a big game tonight though, because it's never. We always say go to win, get a win, but going to win to get a win is still tough to get on that bus and go there. There ain't no be anybody in the gym,
yep.
And it's like, and you just got to play, and it's a tough place to play, and win can beat people.
Yeah,
you know, and so if you don't come ready, then don't. It's the classic trap game tonight for them. And then you got the big one at home against the Dragons ready to roll. And then you go to the Dragons, Harlandale's out for them. They want to get them.
Legacy's also going to be out
and
for
then,
yeah,
I mean, that's going to be their life for the rest of the season.
Right.
And so how well do they respond to that?
And you could easily go, if you're the Dragons, right? If you're not careful and you're not keeping up with that momentum, playing to a certain level, and I think not letting up when the pressure gets on, you could easily jump from 1 to 4 very quickly if you drop 2. And so that could be a massive change. I know we had last week Trey Martin was up for one of the players of the week as well for Dave Campbell's Texas Basketball's player of the week. So there's a lot of storylines going into this next few games for basketball.
This week is a huge week of basketball. Yeah. Just the beginning of the second round for the girls, and then the end of the first round for the boys to kind of jockey for position. I mean, we know who the teams are. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's really 6 teams for 4 spots in the girls, and really there's really only 1 spot up for grabs with 3 teams. And the boys' side, it's really the Dragons, the Titans, and then it's, you know, Harlandale, South San, and McCollum. It's a 5-team race, really. Win and them are kind of struggling. So you come into the second half, those are big games. Don't drop one because you end up losing a seed here and there and things of that nature. And all 5 of those teams are, if you're going to rank them, you'd probably be like Dragons, Harlandale, or the Titans. I think that one will end up being a split probably at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And then South San. And then I think McCollum's going to be can McCollum jump up and bite somebody?
Yep.
That's going to be the thing.
And so moving on into soccer, there's obviously a lot of expectation. Like you said, last year we had, was it every team in soccer went to the playoffs?
No, I think 2 years ago it was every team, and then last year was 3 out of the 4.
Gotcha. So looking at it, how are expectations looking so far? I know the Dragons have dropped 2. They tied recently.
Yeah.
And so they're going through the motions. They're still a top team in the state and the city. But starting at the Dragons, how are expectations kind of moving and shifting as we continue with this schedule?
I think on a 30,000-foot view of this thing is that Legacy's closing the gap with Southwest.
I agree.
I think the girls are closing the gap. But the girls, the Southwest girls had a tough one against O'Connor, but then they won 2 games. On Saturday they beat Wagner 8-0, and then I don't remember exactly who they played on Thursday, but they got a W on Thursday as well. On Legacy's side, they struggle a little bit with the time stuff and just the second straight week of tournaments and everything where they lost to Holmes on Friday. I think they got a win, I think, on Saturday, and then they struggled. They either tied or lost on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they're playing, you're talking about 2 weeks ago they lost to Bernie 2-0.
Yeah,
that's a 10-0 game last year.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Things like that, and so what I think is to kind of put it in perspective on the girls' side is that game, the Fire and Armor Derby, is going to be interesting this year. On the boys' side, I think that the Dragons found out that, hey, we got some work to do.
Yeah.
If we're going to meet all those extremely, maybe even unfair high expectations for a kind of a young group. They're starting some freshmen and everything, and so, they won 4-2, I think it was, against Burbank on Thursday. Then they turned around and lost or tied. I'm sorry. They beat Burbank. Then they beat Los Fresnos,
mm-hmm.
which was a nice win after last year because that was their only regular season loss last year. And then so they beat Los Fresnos, and then they tied Clark 3-3. And so you turn around and look at Legacy, struggled again a little bit, but played some tough teams. And I mean, they lost to Davenport in the last minute and a half, and Davenport's a really good team. They're probably going to be a state contender at the 4A level, and then they come in on Friday and play another good team, and then on Saturday
beat the brakes off of Kennedy.
Exactly,
7-0.
beat the holy bejesus
Yeah.
out of Kennedy. Everybody scores. You get a score, you get a goal, things like that. So good confidence booster going into a week off. But then this Friday, Legacy's playing the number 1 team in the region in Piper, and so that's going to be a big time game where they're tested. The difference in the past to now is that Coach Sandoval's done and Coach Romero have done an amazing job of getting them tested. And they've, for the most part, responded. You know what I mean? And so they're not going to see anybody, but maybe they won't even, they're not going to see anybody in district that they haven't seen that kind of talent before. Does that make sense?
Yep.
To include the Dragons. And so that's going to be huge and exciting going into soccer season.
Man, it's going to be tough. But I will say, looking at kind of the standings right now, Southwest is still second. Right now, Medina Valley is kind of just taking over in soccer right now.
And I would say compare schedules.
Yeah, that's true too. The schedules are very different. But looking right now for the varsity boys soccer team over at both schools, the standings as it is right now is Medina Valley is at number 1. They are 9-0-2, so 0 losses, 2 ties. Southwest is 4-2-1. Then you got Harlandale, Southside. Southwest Legacy is right there, right behind. Wynn, McCullum, and South San hasn't won a game either. And so those are all teams that they're going to be playing throughout the season and looking at. And as the schedule comes up right now, you got Alexander and Wynn for Southwest, and then at Medina Valley. So February 2nd, which is going to be, what is that? Is that in two weeks, Fridays?
Mm-hmm.
On Friday, February 2nd, Southwest High School at Medina Valley. That's going to be a massive one.
That's going to be a huge game.
Yeah, so that's going to be a really big one to look forward to. So, soccer season is in full swing. Again, we said it last week. What's really exciting about soccer season is that you're seeing teams that you would really never really see play a Southwest ISD school. And it's one of the few times on the calendar year that you're seeing teams playing, like you said, Piper, Fox Tech, like these teams that just really we don't get enough exposure
and
to.
I think it's kind of like, our softball team, teams who have won so much that it's kind of like in football for a while, right? Our first year in 2006, we were playing Harlandale, not Jay's best team till this year, but before that they were okay. Uvalde, things like that. We get done with that season and we go into the next one and we're playing Steele, the new school, Clemens, but and playing well with them. But from then on, we're playing Steele, Brennan, these, in 6A, like you're talking about playing the type of schedule that that's the difficulty of schedule because of success that hadn't been played here in probably ever, to be honest. Definitely since the days of Coach Goad and a year and Coach Detmer here and there when Ty Detmer was here, but the level of success in football, the level of success in softball brings those teams in. You look at our softball tournament, there's teams, you got Harlingen South, you got all these other teams coming in, and they're top teams that are playing in 3, 4, 5 rounds in the playoffs. Yeah. That's what our soccer teams are doing as well now. So the level of play and the teams we play are a lot different. So when you look at Medina Valley's 9-0-2 team, well, they won the Edgewood tournament. Yeah. Who was in the Edgewood tournament? What is that like? And so there's different ways of scheduling based on, where your program is at that time. And we got more than a few programs that are doing pretty well.
Absolutely. And we look forward to highlighting more of those programs in the future. And so right now the focus is all about soccer, basketball. Obviously, we're going to shift a lot into the track and field coming up. When you put your jackets on, that's track and field season. So we're really excited to talk more about that.
Softball, tennis, baseball. Back to tennis.
It's going to be a lot. It's going to come fast and furious.
Got some good golfers coming in.
And with softball and baseball, you have those beautiful new fields. Make sure you go check those out, as well as the new scoreboards popping up. So it's going to be a fun time here at Southwest ISD, and we're glad to be kind of your pilots for all this journey. So for myself, for Peter Wagner, thank you again for tuning in to another episode of Scoreboard. Again, follow us on YouTube at SWISD TV. You can follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, Amazon, all that great stuff, wherever you can find podcasts. Just search us up for the Scoreboard Podcast. Again, thank you for tuning in. We look forward to bringing you more Southwest ISD athletics news and hopefully some more big signings for some of our Southwest ISD student athletes. So with that, have a wonderful week and a wonderful weekend. And as always, we are
Southwest.